It's John Pollock and John Ramdeen. This is Fight News Now. We've got a lot of topics to cover and a short amount of time, Mr. Ramdeen. So let us start off. The latest news was involving Brock Lesnar, who failed a second drug test in conjunction with UFC 200. This was an actual in-competition test done on the night of UFC 200. Doesn't really change a whole lot other than the fact that with or without USADA, he would have been caught here because this was a Nevada test, and since that time, ESPN and the LA Times, they have reported the fact that it was clomiphene, that was it, that he was caught for, and we're going to now wait for Brock Lesnar's defense of all of this, but certainly it's going to put into question if this guy is ever going to fight again. And if the WWE would ever entertain the idea of this guy fighting again, he may not have that option.
Yeah, but who knows? I mean, we're still talking about Brock Lesnar. UFC 200 went down not that long ago, but he continues to be in the news, and it depends. The thing about Brock Lesnar, and you know it better than anybody, he'll very rarely will he give you a straight answer. He dances around things. I highly doubt he'll even address this situation. And it will come down to the commission and, of course, USADA. And like you pointed out, who knows if Brock Lesnar even planned on ever competing in mixed martial arts again. But even if he does get a 2-year suspension, say he's suspended for 2 years, in 2 years' time, people will still want to see Brock Lesnar in the UFC.
He'll be 41 at that point.
Dan Henderson's 47?
Exactly. So you're looking at someone that I wouldn't completely close the door to it. I would say as long as he's under a WWE deal, not a prayer. But this is also one that, for a lot of fighters, I mean, they're looking at their livelihood, their careers. With Brock Lesnar, this suspension is as much a financial one and what he could lose from his purse. And you go back, it was an incredible story that came out of UFC 200. Has this kind of erased whatever goodwill there was? Seeing Brock Lesnar make this comeback, defeat someone in Mark Hunt, have these drug tests kind of erased that victory? And now this is simply, it's Brock Lesnar and defending himself and not losing such a huge amount of this purse that he's owed.
Yeah, I think the Brock Lesnar detractors going into the fight are the same detractors that are coming out of the fight. I told you so, I knew it. You have to look at the guy, you know, he's just a freak athlete who abused steroids throughout his career. That's the appeal. But no matter whether you love him or you hate him, once he is in competition, people need to tune into Brock Lesnar. It is a fact. The numbers speak for itself. So let's just say the reality is that he does get popped for this, that it is true that he tests positive and he's banned for 2 years. It is irrelevant because the guy is such a star that people will want to see him upon his return, whether he loses or wins.
So it's still a process that Brock Lesnar is in the midst of and speaking out, which he is, other than saying he's going to get to the bottom of this. Chad Mendes, though, he has been handed a 2-year suspension at 31 years of age. I mean, there's never never a good time in your career to get a 2-year suspension, but especially when you're in your early 30s like that for Chad Mendes. Now, he was cited for a substance that helps promote your own system producing growth hormone. This was a test done back in May. It was an out-of-competition test. We haven't seen him since that Frankie Edgar fight back in December. And Chad Mendes has largely said nothing about this. We don't even know if he's going to be contesting this suspension for 2 years, but it's a big one. And it's a small list of guys that have gotten those 2-year suspensions, but it's growing now.
Yeah, and I mean, that's what you have to look at. I think fighters, and you and I were having this conversation, the fact is, doesn't matter who you are. You can be the biggest name in the sport, or you can be kind of one of those unassuming fighters. The UFC is going to be targeted. Everybody is going to be under scrutiny, and you have to play by the rules if you want to maintain your livelihood and fight on a regular basis. You just think about the possibilities of what Chad Mendes, the financial earnings he could have had over those next 2 years, considering 31 years of age, still in his physical prime. There are so many big fights that Chad Mendes could have secured.
Do you foresee a reaction from fans that maybe don't have the interest of whether this is a drug-free sport or not, that are simply looking at the end result, that they're looking at the prospect of no more Brock Lesnar fights, John Jones going away for a long time, and simply looking at that and not being in favor of USADA? I'm sure there's a lot of fans out there that they simply want to watch the biggest names, and they don't care what these guys are on. They would rather just see no evil, hear no evil, and USADA's taking away the stars.
You nailed it, because the mixed martial arts is different than a lot of other sports. People tune into basketball, they tune into hockey, they tune into football. You can kind of connect to it because, growing up, I played, ball hockey or ice hockey. I played baseball, I played basketball. So people understand the game on a personal level. Unless you've been on the mats or you've done some kickboxing, it's very difficult to tie yourself to the sport of mixed martial arts, especially when you look at guys like Brock Lesnar, or you look at Alistair Overeem, Czech Congo. These athletes look like comic book characters. And when you take that away from the viewing audience, that's what makes them special, is they don't look like regular people. So that is why the masses tune in to see these freak athletes. And you remove that, and it's like, well, you're bursting my bubble. I want to see the craziest fights, the biggest spectacles, and if the best version of that athlete means that they have to take some sort of performance enhancer, that's what I want to see. And I'm not saying it's right, and I'm not saying it's wrong, but we have to remember, you think about that when Mark McGuire and Sammy Sosa were battling out for the home run. These guys were so jacked up, and they were nailing things out of the park, and that's what people want to see. They want to see freak shows, and you remove that, is the interest still there? Maybe.
Let's move on as well. The card that's coming up on Fox in Vancouver, looking past this weekend's Fox card, they have now inherited one of the welterweight fights from UFC 202, Damian Maia and Carlos Condit. They will now get 5 rounds on August the 27th. This is a fight that I was really looking forward to at 202. Now it gets to be its own main event, which is a big change for these guys, because August 27th isn't that far away, and now it will be a main event fight. But this is an outstanding fight at 170 pounds.
Yeah, what I look about when I think about both Damian Maia and Carlos Condit, these guys are very intelligent. They understand the landscape of mixed martial arts. They have to be ready to adapt. They've done it their entire career. So to go from being on the card with Nathan Diaz and Conor McGregor, yeah, that's interesting. But then you go to the main event of a show that's going to the masses. When you're on Big Fox, so many people are tuning in. And this
card needed a main event.
Sure, it needed a main event, but you had Anthony Pettis, who was making his 45-pound debut, one of the most exciting fighters in the world. So I think that's what you need. You just have to load this card, and that's what the Big Fox show is all about. Sure, it may or may not impact the rankings, but you're going to guarantee that you're going to thrill the fans because of the stylistic matchups. And again, when you think about what's going down between Carlos Condit and Damian Maia, you can think to yourself, you're going to be pretty excited about what's happening.
Can you see the winner of that fight being in line for a title fight? Certainly there's a lot of things at play over the next couple of weeks, whether it's 201 with the title fight, and even Nate Diaz and Conor McGregor. That fight will be at 170 pounds. But Condit and Maia, to me, those are definitely players here.
I agree 100%. I think that if you have a stoppage win, yes, if Carlos Condit manages to knock out Damian Maia, or Damian Maia taps out Carlos Condit, yes. But we're talking about two guys at the top of the food chain. We're anticipating a certain type of fight, but because these guys are so smart, they may reduce their risk-taking mentalities in this game, and you might see a conservative battle. And if that's what you get, you can understand why both guys would have that approach, because you can't afford to lose when you're this close to getting a crack at the title. Carlos Condit was right there. Some people had him beating Robbie Lawler. So I think that they have to be smart, but you can see how it can be a thriller, or it can be a very conservative matchup.
Last thing, what has your interest for the Bellator card Friday night in Mulvane, Kansas?
Yeah, I'm going to have to say Caldwell. I think, I wasn't sold on this guy, but he seems to be a legit fighter who has a ton of upside and a lot of promise, and I wouldn't be surprised if Bellator decides, you know what, we're going to keep this guy and we're going to promote him.
All right, that's coming up, as well as the UFC card in Chicago, which is going down this weekend, and you can tune into our post-fight coverage late Saturday night, as well as Sunday morning, going through all of the fallout from the UFC's card in Chicago, which is headlined by Holly Holm and Valentina Shevchenko.